I have been procrastinating making the glazing video for quite a few days now because I realized I made a big mistake. Normally, once you glaze your pieces, they have to be bisque fired before you can glaze them. That's because they're at a stage where the ceramic is really porous, the glaze takes really well to that stage of the clay and can adhere to it really easily. But the mistake I made was I thought my pieces had been bisqued. I went through the whole glazing process and I filmed it for you guys. And then once the pieces started falling apart and the glaze wasn't sticking to the ceramic or to the clay, I realized I made a huge mistake. And unfortunately, because they had already been glazed, they can't then be bisqued after that. As devastating as it is, I had to scrap all the pieces I made in the first two videos. I'm sad about it. I had to say goodbye to some of the pieces. I'll insert a clip of the satisfying destruction of all of those pieces. But it's okay because it's a learning process, and I'm just grateful that I can learn this lesson very early on into starting up my small business, because working at this studio, now I am very familiar with what the pieces look like once they are bisqued, once they are at the leather hard stage, and everything like that.
Although we know these pieces ultimately didn't make it, I'd still like to walk you through the glazing steps, as the process would be the same if I were to do it all over again at the right stage. Step 1 is prepping your piece. After your piece has been bisque fired, use a damp sponge to remove any dust or debris. One important rule when glaze firing is to ensure no glaze touches the kiln shelf, meaning any part of your piece touching the shelf, like a foot or the inside rim of my teapot lid, must have absolutely no glaze on it. This is because when fired, glaze melts and becomes molten glass. If any glazed part of the piece touches the kiln shelf, it will fuse to the surface as it cools, causing the piece to stick, which can damage your pottery and the kiln. To avoid glaze sticking to the feet of my teapot when dipping it in glaze, I'm using liquid latex. You can also use liquid wax, which I've used in the past, but I'm actually really enjoying using the liquid latex. I paint on a thin layer of latex on the feet and let it dry. Step 2 is decorating and glazing your piece. For the jewelry dishes with quotes, I use a thin piping tool to fill the lettering with black underglaze. Once the underglaze is dry, I go to the glaze wall to choose the look I want. For my mug, I was going for this smoky gray-purple color. To get this color, we need to dip the mug in 2 different glazes. The first dip would be in satin white, and once that glaze is dry, I would dip the mug a second time in rustin. We need to give each glaze a good mix. We use toilet brushes, but don't worry, they're unused. Much of the ingredients that make up a glaze can settle to the bottom over time, and if not mixed properly, the glaze can result in uneven color or texture on the finished piece. I want to have a thin layer of glaze to avoid any excess glaze melting onto the kiln, so I dip the mug quickly in the glaze, then turn it upside down and let the excess run off. Once the glaze is dry to the touch, it's ready for its second dip in the other glaze. And step 3 is cleaning up your piece. The last step is to remove the liquid latex, tidy up any bite marks left over from the prongs, and remove any excess glaze. And luckily at this studio we have a technician who loads and unloads the kiln, so they double check that each piece is safe to fire. Ralphie says thanks for watching till the end. Leave a comment down below if you've also learned from a past mistake, and subscribe to the channel if you love pottery and want to know more about what it's like starting a small business. Thanks for watching. Bye!